What if one interview, one statement, or one subtle comment from Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse just revealed far more about the future of XRP than most people realize at first? Because honestly, that's exactly why the entire XRP community suddenly exploded online again. Social media went insane. Crypto influencers started posting nonstop, and thousands of investors immediately began asking the same question. Did Brad Garlinghouse just reveal where XRP is really going? Now, before we go any further, let's make something extremely important clear immediately, because the crypto world turned speculation into fake certainty faster than almost anything else on the internet. Brad Garlinghouse did not officially announce XRP reaching impossible prices tomorrow. He did not confirm XRP replacing every banking system overnight. And this video is definitely not financial advice. But what we are going to discuss is why recent comments, interviews, and broader institutional developments surrounding Ripple have reignited huge excitement around XRP's long-term future. And honestly, once you begin connecting all the pieces together, you start understanding why so many investors suddenly feel like Ripple may be positioned much closer to the future of global finance than most people currently realize. Because the world itself is changing rapidly. Financial systems are evolving. Governments are building digital asset regulations. Banks are researching blockchain infrastructure. Tokenization conversations are accelerating globally. And institutions are preparing for a much more digital financial future. That's not hype anymore. That's transformation happening in real time. Now think carefully about this. For years, Ripple was one of the most controversial companies in the crypto industry. Critics attacked XRP constantly. Regulatory pressure created uncertainty. Many investors lost patience during long periods of sideways movement. And meanwhile, social media focused mostly on meme coins and hype cycles instead of institutional infrastructure. But through all of that, Ripple kept building. That's the narrative XRP supporters strongly believe. While everyone else chased short-term attention, Ripple focused on long-term infrastructure, cross-border payments, liquidity movement, settlement efficiency, financial interoperability. Those are trillion-dollar institutional conversations. And now suddenly the financial world itself appears to be moving directly toward those exact conversations. That's why Brad Garlinghouse's statements now create enormous attention online, because supporters believe Ripple spent years preparing quietly while the rest of the market underestimated what institutional adoption could eventually look like. Now let's talk about something most average investors still don't fully understand. The future of crypto may depend less on hype and more on infrastructure. That's huge, because historically, the technologies that eventually dominate industries are often the ones solving major real-world problems. The internet exploded because it transformed communication. Smartphones exploded because they transformed connectivity. Streaming platforms exploded because they transformed media consumption. And blockchain infrastructure may eventually explode institutionally if it transforms financial efficiency globally. That's the key point many XRP supporters focus on. Ripple wasn't trying only to become another speculative crypto asset. Ripple focused directly on improving inefficiencies inside global financial systems. And honestly, those inefficiencies are enormous. Cross-border payments can remain slow. Settlement systems still contain friction. Liquidity gets trapped across jurisdictions. Operational costs remain high. And international financial movement often feels outdated compared to modern technology everywhere else. That's crazy when you really think about it. We live in a world where AI can generate realistic videos instantly, where smartphones connect billions of people globally in seconds, where digital communication operates non-stop, yet moving money internationally can still take days behind the scenes. That's exactly why institutions globally started taking blockchain infrastructure more seriously, because efficiency matters enormously in finance. Reducing friction saves money. Improving settlement improves liquidity. Faster movement improves global competitiveness. And Ripple positioned itself directly around those efficiency conversations years ago. Now this is where Brad Garlinghouse's comment become especially interesting for XRP supporters, because whenever Brad talked about the future of digital assets, tokenization, regulation, or institutional adoption, Supporters believe he's indirectly signaling how large Ripple's long-term vision may actually be. Now again, balance matters. Brad Garlinghouse cannot publicly reveal every institutional strategy or partnership detail openly. Large financial systems move carefully. Governments move slowly. Banks require compliance. Infrastructure adoption takes time. But what excites XRP supporters is the broader direction of industry itself. Because honestly, the financial world today looks completely different compared to just a few years ago. Back then, crypto is useless. Today, how do we regulate digital assets? How do we tokenize financial markets? How do we modernize settlement infrastructure? How do we integrate blockchain systems safely? That's an enormous transformation, and Ripple continues remaining directly connected to many of those conversations. Now, let's talk about tokenization. Because honestly, this may become one of the biggest financial revolutions of the modern era. Most people still don't fully understand how massive tokenization could eventually become globally. Imagine stocks moving digitally, real estate becoming tokenized worldwide, government bonds settling instantly, assets trading globally 24/7, programmable financial ecosystems operating across borders automatically. That future sounds futuristic today, but major institutions are actively preparing for it right now. Banks are modernizing infrastructure aggressively. Asset managers are investing billions into tokenized products. Governments are building digital asset frameworks. And financial systems globally are evolving much faster than average people realize. Now think carefully about what happens if enormous amounts of tokenized value eventually move through digital ecosystems worldwide. Liquidity becomes critical. Settlement efficiency becomes essential. Interoperability between systems becomes incredibly valuable. That's exactly why XRP supporters believe Ripple could eventually become highly important long-term, because Ripple focused specifically on liquidity movement between systems. Now another reason excitement exploded recently is because institutional sentiment toward blockchain technology changed dramatically. A few years ago, crypto is dangerous. Blockchain has no utility. Digital assets will disappear. Today, banks are integrating blockchain research. Governments are building digital finance frameworks. Stablecoins are becoming infrastructure tools. Tokenization became mainstream institutional discussion. And financial modernization is accelerating globally. That's a completely different environment. And XRP supporters believe Brad Garlinghouse understands exactly where this industry is heading next. Now, obviously, critics still raise legitimate concerns. Competition remains intense. Stablecoins continue growing aggressively. Governments may prioritize centralized digital currencies instead. Banks could develop private blockchain systems. And regulations still remain uncertain globally. Nobody knows exactly how the future unfolds. But one thing feels increasingly undeniable now. The financial world is transforming rapidly. Digital infrastructure is expanding globally. Institutional blockchain adoption is accelerating. Tokenization conversations are exploding. And XRP continues remaining directly connected to discussions surrounding liquidity movement, settlement modernization, and cross-border financial infrastructure. That's exactly why so many investors suddenly feel like Brad Garlinghouse may have indirectly revealed something much bigger than people initially realized. Because whether people love XRP or hate it, the future of finance appears increasingly digital, and Ripple continues positioning itself directly inside that transformation. Now here's where this entire story starts becoming even more intense, because once you really begin understanding how global financial systems operate behind the scenes, you realize why so many XRP supporters believe Brad Garlinghouse may already see where the future of finance is heading long before the average investor fully understands it. And honestly, that possibility is exactly why every interview, every public statement, and every subtle comment from Brad suddenly creates massive attention across the crypto world. Because supporters believe Ripple isn't simply building another cryptocurrency project. They believe Ripple may be building infrastructure for the next era of global finance itself. Now think carefully about how quickly the financial world is changing right now. Artificial intelligence is reshaping industries. Governments are building digital asset regulations. Banks are modernizing settlement systems. Tokenization conversations are accelerating globally, and institutions everywhere are preparing for more digital financial infrastructure. That's a massive transformation happening right in front of us. And the craziest part? Most average people still don't fully understand how enormous this shift could eventually become. Now, let's talk about institutional finance for a second, because honestly, this is where many retail investors completely misunderstand the crypto industry. Institutions do not think like retail traders. Retail traders often focus on short-term price action, daily volatility, meme coin hype, quick profits. Institutions focus on completely different things: infrastructure, efficiency, compliance, liquidity, interoperability, operational costs. That distinction matters enormously, because Ripple spent years focusing directly on the types of problems institutions actually care about solving: cross-border payment inefficiencies, liquidity fragmentation, settlement delays, operational friction between financial systems. Those are trillion-dollar institutional problems. And now suddenly, the financial world itself appears to be moving toward the exact conversations Ripple spent years preparing for. That's why Brad Garlinghouse's comments create so much speculation online, because supporters believe Ripple may already be positioned around where institutional finance is heading next. Now again, balance matters, because the internet exaggerates absolutely everything. Brad Garlinghouse did not officially announce XRP taking over the global economy tomorrow. There is no confirmed secret switch replacing all banks overnight. But what keeps fueling excitement is the broader transformation happening across finance itself. Because honestly, the world today looks dramatically different compared to early crypto years. Back then, crypto is fake. Blockchain is useless. Digital assets will disappear. Today, governments are regulating crypto. Banks are integrating blockchain infrastructure. Asset managers are tokenizing financial products. Stablecoins are becoming payment tools. And institutions globally are preparing for digital financial ecosystems. That's an enormous shift in a very short amount of time. And XRP supporters believe Ripple positioned itself years ahead of where mainstream finance is finally starting to move. Now let's talk about tokenization again, because honestly, this may completely reshape global finance over the next decade. Most people still don't fully understand how important tokenization could eventually become. Imagine stocks settling instantly digitally, real estate becoming globally tradable, government bonds moving through blockchain systems, assets operating through programmable financial infrastructure, markets trading 24/7 worldwide. That future sounds futuristic, but major institutions are actively preparing for it right now. BlackRock openly discusses tokenization. Banks are modernizing settlement systems aggressively. Governments are building digital finance frameworks. Financial infrastructure globally is evolving much faster than most people realize. Now think carefully about what happens if enormous amounts of tokenized value eventually move through digital ecosystems worldwide. Liquidity becomes absolutely critical. Settlement efficiency becomes essential. Interoperability between systems becomes incredibly valuable. That's exactly why XRP supporters believe Ripple's infrastructure could eventually become highly important, because Ripple focused specifically on moving liquidity efficiently between financial systems. Now here's another reason Brad Garlinghouse's recent comments triggered so much excitement online. Many supporters believe Ripple quietly survived one of the hardest periods in crypto history: regulatory pressure, market crashes, negative media coverage, constant criticism. And yet despite all of that, Ripple kept building partnerships, expanding globally, and positioning itself around institutional infrastructure. That matters psychologically, because supporters believe companies that survive pressure often emerge stronger when industries mature. And honestly, the crypto industry itself appears to be maturing rapidly now. The conversation shifted away from "does blockchain matter?" toward "how do we implement blockchain safely? How do we tokenize markets? How do we modernize financial infrastructure?" That's a completely different phase of industry evolution. Now, another fascinating part of this entire story is interoperability. And honestly, Interoperability may become one of the most valuable components of future digital finance. Because even if governments create separate digital currencies, even if banks build private blockchain systems, even if tokenized ecosystems expand globally, those systems still need efficient ways to communicate and move liquidity between each other. Without interoperability, digital finance becomes fragmented and inefficient. Ripple focused specifically on interoperability challenges between financial systems. That's one reason XRP supporters believe Ripple could eventually become extremely important long-term. Now, let's talk emotionally for a moment because honestly, this is why XRP communities remain so passionate after all these years. A lot of people today feel financially exhausted. Inflation continues hurting purchasing power. Housing became more expensive. Debt levels exploded globally. Traditional savings feel weaker every year. And meanwhile, giant institutions always seem to position themselves early before average investors fully understand what's happening. That emotional frustration matters. Because historically, periods of economic uncertainty often accelerate interest in disruptive technologies promising transformation. People start searching for future opportunities, searching for systems connected to where the world may eventually head next. That emotional energy fuels huge blockchain communities globally. And XRP specifically remains emotionally powerful because supporters believe Ripple focus on infrastructure instead of hype cycles. Now, another major factor driving excitement recently is regulation. For years, unclear regulation slowed institutional adoption dramatically. Large financial institutions hesitated because legal frameworks remained uncertain. But now, governments globally are building crypto regulations, stablecoin frameworks, digital asset policies, tokenization rules. That's critical because institutions generally move slowly until regulatory clarity improves. And once regulations become clearer, institutional adoption can accelerate much faster than most people expect. That's why investors pay enormous attention to every statement from leaders like Brad Garlinghouse today. Because supporters believe Ripple may already understand where institutional adoption is ultimately heading. Now, obviously, critics still raise legitimate concerns too. Competition remains intense. Stablecoins continue expanding rapidly. Governments may prioritize centralized digital currencies instead. Banks could develop private blockchain infrastructure. And nobody knows exactly how the future unfolds. But one thing feels increasingly undeniable now. The financial world is transforming rapidly. Digital infrastructure is expanding globally. Institutional blockchain adoption is accelerating. Tokenization conversations are exploding worldwide. And Ripple continues remaining directly connected to discussions surrounding liquidity movement, settlement modernization, and cross-border financial infrastructure. That's exactly why so many investors suddenly feel like Brad Garlinghouse may have revealed far more about XRP's future than most people initially realized. Because whether people realize it or not, the next era of finance may already be starting to take shape behind the scenes.